So let's see what happens after the Severans, so the Severan dynasty. The end of the Severan dynasty opens the crisis, the so-called crisis of the 3rd century. So this is a period during the middle years of the 3rd century, so more or less going from 235 to 284. So the Roman Empire went through several changes which almost destroyed it. So this is the beginning of the decline. So let's see some of these causes and changes. Barbarian invasions, especially by the tribes of the Goths and other Germanic tribes, threatened the empire from the outside. Also, this was a time of almost continuous civil war. So emperors were placed on the throne by the army, only then to be murdered and replaced by another of the army's favorites. The trouble was that, in this century, many problems surfaced all at the same time, some of them on a grander scale than even before, and they proved more difficult to eradicate. This is also a period about which there is a little reliable information. All the historians that we already know, Suetonius, Tacitus, Livy, Dio Cassius, and other early sources died before this period. The following, Ammianus Marcellinus, Claudian, Herodian, Cassiodorus, and Merobaudis, lived later, but either did not write about this period or their works were lost. So our main sources for this period are histories that were written at a much later date, so not so precise, or inscriptions on coins, fragments of information from inscriptions on monuments, and evidence for sure from archaeological digs. So the one work that is most often quoted about this period is the so-called Historia Augusta, or History of the later Caesars, so of the later emperors. It is believed to be reliable for the period that goes from the middle of the 2nd century until about the beginning of this crisis, so 235 CE. But after this, so exactly this period, much of the Historia Augusta is myth and legend. So two of the most serious threats of the empire in the 3rd century were the developments taking place among the tribes of the northern frontiers, so beyond the Rhine and Danube fortifications, and the growth of an incredible and centralizing power in the east, the Parthian Empire. The Parthian Empire, that was bordering on the eastern edges the Roman world and threatening continuously it, had recently been weakened by civil war. But this changed during this period, and especially in the first years of the 3rd century, when the dynasty of Persians, the Sassanids, expelled the Persian rulers and established a formidable centralized power. Under pressures on two frontiers, as we have seen, the Romans started to squabble among themselves. The civilians distrusted their own armies, and the soldiers themselves distrusted some of their commanders, even the emperor, to whom they had sworn allegiance. So they proclaimed their new emperors. The army had always been able to make or break emperors, as we have seen in the past, but never in such quick succession as they did now. So the crisis started after the assassination of the last of the Severans, Severus Alexander, in 235. And after his assassination, the soldiers in various parts of the empire proclaimed 50 emperors in more or less the same number of years. Then another big change, so the role of the Roman emperor changed during the crisis. That's called also the anarchy of the 3rd century, marking so the end of the Principate, the early phase of imperial Roman government. A series of soldiers, the so-called barracks emperor, assumed the highest office, so became emperors, leading to the breakdown of the previous system of imperial government. Before, the emperor had functioned within the fiction of preserving the old republican form of government, so with all the institutions maintained, even if under his complete control. The crisis came to a close with Emperor Diocletian, who finally reformed the imperial office and gave to the empire a partial recovery. And through this he initiated the period known as the Dominate, in contrast to the previous that's called the Principate. After Severus Alexander, the new emperor was the so-called Maximinus Thrax, the Thracian. That was a giant peasant who rose through the ranks to be the commander of the imperial guard. But in 2038, the Senate tired of him and put up their own candidate. So in the end, there was a growing confusion, and during this period 5 emperors died, including Maximinus, who had invaded Italy and been murdered by his own troops. So this is another year that we can call the year of the 5 emperors, because 5 emperors died during this year to 2038, including Maximin. So these 5 were exactly Maximin, Gordian I, his son Gordian II, Pupienus and Balbinus. It's interesting to read about Gordian II. 22 acknowledged concubines and a library of 62,000 volumes attested the variety of his inclinations. And from the productions he left behind him, it appears that the former as well as the latter were designed for use rather than for ostentation. This is a quote from the renowned book about the history of the decline and fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. The survivor after the death of these 5 emperors was Gordian III, the son of the daughter of Gordian I. He was only 13 when he became emperor. With the help of a regent, so he enjoyed a lot of civil and military success until he too was murdered in 244. While he was in Mesopotamia collecting animals to take part in his triumphal procession in Rome for his victories in the east, so in Persia. Here we can see a bronze medallion of Gordian III showing the Circus Maximus with the emperor as victor, so victorious, in a 6-horse chariot race. Gladiators and wrestlers compete in the foreground. So this is an example how we can have some information, for example, from coins, rather than from historical texts. So while the next 13 emperors came and violently went, the hostile peoples outside the frontiers gathered themselves for the kill. In Germany, the Goths, the Franks, and the Alemanni established a permanent threat to the Roman Empire, which for sure contributed to its ultimate annihilation that will arrive in the 5th century. Okay, so then in the next video we will see other emperors in this period of the crisis.